3 questions. What is this pony doing here? What is this pony's name? And why is that name Best Pony? When I read the synopsis for this episode a few weeks ago, I was intrigued. Could MLP be trying to tackle a romance episode? This should be interesting. So I started preparing a bunch of super serious, super in-depth romance analysis. I was gonna be like, let's look at MLP's previous attempts at romance. Let's go examine the relationship between Cadence and Shining Armor. But when I actually saw the episode, I realized something. If this episode made one thing abundantly clear, it's that this is an episode that's not meant to be taken very seriously. And going super in-depth looking at all the romance and all that would just be wrong. Of course, that doesn't mean I can't still analyze this episode, but I just won't be going, well, putting the quality of romance in this episode on a scale ranging from George Lucas to Shakespeare, I'd put it at a 7. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get on with the episode. So the episode kicks off with an announcement that Rarity will be planning a big festival to commemorate Ponyville's history. Hang on a second. Shouldn't Pinkie Pie be planning the festival? That is Pinkie's forte, after all. Well, as it turns out, the characters actually address this issue, so +1 reading my mind points to Josh Haber. Anyways, Rarity shows her plans for the festival to her friends who all seem very impressed and are willing to help set up. However, Rarity reveals that she has some other motives behind the festival. She wants to impress a culture journalist named Trenderhoof, who will be writing about the festival, and Rarity seems to have quite the crush on Trenderhoof. Okay, so this is one problem I have with the episode. Why does Rarity suddenly have a crush on this pony who we've never even heard of before? It doesn't feel consistent with Rarity's character. I thought Rarity was supposed to be the sort of strong, independent mare who don't need no stallion kind of personality. The last time Rarity had any sort of romantic interest was back in Season 1, and we all know how that turned out. But, as I said, I really can't be too critical, and if the episode can make this concept work well, then I'm happy to suspend my disbelief and go along with it. Back to the episode, I really like Trenderhoof's design, with the dorky glasses and the sweater and that little stubble there. He looks so much like a hipster, and hipster is kind of the whole point of his character, so the design works really well. And as Rarity shows him around town, we see that Trenderhoof couldn't be less interested in Rarity, but instead has eyes for Applejack. Now ain't this an interesting conflict? A conflict that didn't get introduced until 8 minutes into the episode. This episode is very slow-paced, and please understand that when I say that, it's not a complaint. I actually think a nice, slow-paced, slice-of-life episode is pretty refreshing after a lot of Season 4's mile-a-minute blink-and-you'll-miss-it style. Don't get me wrong, I like both kinds of pacing, but after so many fast-paced, wacky episodes this season, this episode is quite a nice breath of fresh air. So now we have the meat of the episode. Trenderhoof is trying desperately to impress Applejack, who is having none of it, while Rarity is desperately trying to impress Trenderhoof, who isn't so much having none of it, as opposed to just being completely oblivious to it. And this is something I like about Trenderhoof. He does have some actual character and personality to him. He's characterized as being A, a bit of an idiot, and B, a terrible romantic. Watching him flounder when trying to get Applejack's attention is hilarious.
You know, I have such respect for the work ethic of Earth ponies.
Yeah, real smooth moves there, Trenderhoof. The humor is really the best thing about this episode. If there is one thing that Josh Haber loves to do and does really well, it's playing characters' personalities off of each other and getting hilarious results. Of course, I can only really compare this to Haber's one other episode so far, Castlemania, but the similarities are clear. The thing that makes Haber's humor so great is that it feels like the jokes come from the characters and their personalities, and doesn't just feel like the writers are using the characters to tell their jokes. So when I hear the jokes in this episode, or in Castlemania, I hear the joke coming from the characters, and not from the writers through the characters, and all the dialogue flows very smoothly and naturally. For someone so new to the show, Josh Haber has remarkable talents for character interaction. Of course, all this great character interaction and humor probably doesn't mean much to you if you've decided that you still can't get over the concept that Rarity has a crush in the first place, but this is exactly why I'm willing to suspend my disbelief about that. Because once you get over that, it's a great episode, and I don't want to sabotage my enjoyment of the episode just from a few things in the beginning. So the episode continues to escalate as Rarity tries harder and harder to imitate Applejack in the hopes of getting Tenderhoof's attention, and as does any good My Little Pony episode, it escalates to the point of total insanity, as Rarity decides to scrap all the planning she's done so far and instead change to a very southern theme. Applejack, once again, is having none of it, and decides to give Rarity a taste of her own medicine. And now we get a face-off between Rarity imitating Applejack and Applejack imitating Rarity, and it's quite fun. Once again, Tabitha St. Germain delivers with her incredible voice acting. This little charade continues to escalate when suddenly the episode ends. No, seriously, Rarity is suddenly all better now, lesson learned, a diary entry written, Tenderhoof is still around, I think, and we get a happy ending. This is the problem you run into when you go for a slow-paced episode. If you drag your feet for too long, then you suddenly run out of time and have to rush an ending. So while I like the slow pace of the episode, I think the ending could have been handled a teensy bit better. As for my final thoughts on the episode, it's quite good. The humor and character interaction is handled splendidly, and Josh Haber is starting to build himself quite a respectable track record. Sure, the episode is a little rough around the edges, and I do mean around the edges. The only problems with this episode are the beginning and the end. Think of this episode like a sandwich, where the bread is that weird, nasty bread with nuts and whole grains and all that crap, but the filling of the sandwich is still something really nice and delicious, like peanut butter. I like peanut butter.